A few years ago, I began a new spiritual journey. Raised a Christian, but tired of my confusion and denying my gifts, I decided to take a new path of discovery and internal growth. Along the way, one thing I realized was how many others are in a similar place in their lives, knowing there's more, but stuck in their own conditioning or doubt. So I started this podcast as a way of vocalizing the things I was learning, a way to discover the world of spirituality and see if I'm right, that things are not as different as we've been told, that it's all connected and the universe is so much bigger than we knew. I want to be your bridge out of the chaos to help you see new things, to get unstuck, and maybe even find your purpose and your path. To be honest, there'll be days that there's no telling what we'll talk about here, but it'll always be fun and a chance to learn something as we move through the chaos and cross the bridges between what you think you know and what you think you don't. I'm Heather, this is Ballyhoobridge, and I hope you'll come along for the ride with me. So last time we were talking about how to put intention behind your spells, and that got me thinking that maybe we need to talk more about spells, and more specifically spells and rituals, kind of what those are, how we use them, are they different from each other? Let's get started with spells, and I'm going to be honest, the first time I did a spell, with my group, it felt a little weird to me. I wasn't sure how I felt about it. I know some of that is my upbringing and my conditioning, but I also trust my gut, and there are times when there are things we're working on or things that are suggested that I don't feel that comfortable with, and so I don't participate in those things. And I think it's important to consider your feelings, work through those feelings, and figure out, what's yours, what's fear, what's real, and decide what aligns with you and move forward with that. And I think we're going to actually talk about that a little bit more later. But I had to figure that out for myself. And I also wondered, when we do this spell, am I going to actually watch something happen in front of me in real time? Like you would on TV, like in Charmed or Sabrina the Teenage Witch or something, am I going to see something happen? And of course it didn't, but I really always wondered, and I would watch other people to see what's going to happen when they do that. So looking back on it, it kind of makes me giggle. But when we would talk about doing these spells, often what was said was, when you use your magic for your spells, and I'm not sure I really understood what that meant. I was like, use my magic. What do you mean, my magic? I really have magic? So I said, okay, well, what does magic mean? Well, according to Webster's dictionary, it means an extraordinary power or influence seemingly from a supernatural source. And now I'm guessing we're going to need to dive into that more at some point, huh? I think that needs to be a different episode, but maybe we will do that. But for now, that does seem accurate, and it works for what our discussion is today. But see, to me, my magic is my energy. And as I got more into this, and of course, this is to me, I may be interpreting this very differently than other people would, but magic is the manipulation of energy. And then it became the question, well, are we getting power from a supernatural source, or is it just us? And if we draw it from somewhere else, where? For me, is it the creator? Am I drawing my energy from my creator? I'm going to talk about that a little more in a second too. So as time has gone by, I find myself not really doing spells per se, because like I said, I don't know that I always feel aligned with that. And quite frankly, I'm not sure they always feel necessary to me. And again, this is to me, because I guess I feel like I'm doing those things a different way, maybe. And let's get into it, and I think I can explain it a little more. First, I read this somewhere, and I can't for the life of me remember where. So to the guy that said it, I'm sorry, I'm not giving you credit, but I love what you said. He said, all spells are rituals, but not all rituals are spells. And that just felt so accurate and so true. Spells are words uttered in a set formula with magical intent. That's from Britannica.com, if you were wondering. And that actually seems pretty fair. It sounds accurate because a spell is often going to be very concise, it's going to be focused, and it will usually have a singular magical action. Now, when doing a spell, the person is often manipulating energy and symbolic elements, and they have the intention of achieving a specific result. Now, the objects that they're using aren't necessarily magic in and of themselves, but the intention behind it is. Remember, we talked about that last time with spring, that the intention behind what you're doing, that's the key. So spells can be cast by an individual. I find most of the time they are. Sometimes you'll see a group put group power behind a spell. I guess with a spell, I feel like you're kind of aiming a really precise arrow at a very specific target as to what you want to happen. And then you're backing that with your own personal energy. And it might even be fair to say some willpower with that as well. Again, just like those emotions that we talked about last time in that last episode, that's the energy. And your outcomes may be a result of the energy that you put in. So if the energy you're putting in is sort of, frenzied or angry or something like that, your outcome may be a little bit chaotic. But on the other hand, if the energy is positive, it's focus, it's wisdom, it's empathy, those types of energy will most likely give you a more positive outcome. So in my research, I came across a book that was referenced. The book was called The 3 Books of Occult Philosophy, and it indicated that there are 3 types of magic. They said celestial, ceremonial, and natural. Now, ceremonial requires the presence of a pious figure like a priest, a priestess, or a shaman. Celestial magic is using the magic of the cosmos and the stars. So astrology, that's probably going to be a big one that'll come in on that one. And then, of course, natural magic is going to be using herbs, and candles, and crystals, things like that in your spell work. And I guess I kind of feel like that's what I do most of the time, with a bit of astrology thrown in there. And that actually seems pretty concise to me. When I see the different types of magic that people talk about, or maybe that they ask about when they're looking for a certain spell or something, I feel like they all would fit into these categories pretty nicely. So I feel like this really does work. As we talked about last time a little bit, I don't know that you need to get terribly hung up on what you're using for your spell. I think you can use just about anything if you're drawn to it. Now, of course, if you're out there researching a specific thing, a specific spell that you're trying to do, it may require specific things of you. That is very true. So be aware of that. But I think for most basic things, that's just not always the case. I mean, your intentions are going to enchant any object that you use. And generally, you can use the things you're drawn to. Trust your intuition. If you're looking for something specific, it can be a good idea to do some research. Look into herbs and what their uses are, and then choose accordingly. Same with a crystal. Look and see what their properties are. You can even research the different candle colors and what they may mean. And it can help you make better decisions about what to do. Again, especially if something you're doing is a little more complicated. But again, I think you can often trust your intuition and see what you have around. Look at your crystals that you have. See what you're drawn to. Look in your spice cabinet. You'd be surprised the herbs you'll find in there that might be useful for what you're doing. Another thing I want to make sure I bring up is to be specific in what your intention is and what you're asking for. Sometimes if you're sort of super general about how you ask for something, things may not happen quite the way you thought they would. The universe may sort of hear it a different way than you intended it. So I find, at least, and part of that is also my human design type, that I have to be specific in what I do. So just be aware of that. Be aware of how you're saying things, and what your intention is as you go into putting these thoughts out into the universe. So one thing I noticed when I was doing research on different types of spells and things like that is that it seems to boil down to the spell is mainly to affect how someone is acting or how that action is affecting your life, and to change that. So for instance, a banishing spell where you're literally banishing someone from your life. If you were using a binding spell, you're binding the power the person has to harm themselves or others. Maybe that other includes you. A freezing spell, similar to binding, you're freezing their words or their actions. And I've seen so many people use these kinds of spells, these kinds of actions, because of a relationship that has not gone well, or that maybe has even been abusive or something like that. Another one I've seen that may be a way to get someone to act kinder. Have you heard of a sweetening spell? I thought that was very interesting thing to call it. Of course, there are protection spells, and that's just like it sounds. You're looking for protection. I also see people use rebound spells a lot. That way, whatever someone is trying to send to them, it'll bounce back. Did anybody else just say Protego in their head? No, just me. It's okay. Almost everything reminds me of Harry Potter. Anyway, rebound spell. Keep that one in mind. There are also good luck spells where you're drawing in good things. Maybe you're manifesting something that you desire, like money or a job or a home. Of course, there are dark spells as well, and I don't want to get into those, to be honest. I've stated that before. This is something that I'm not really wanting to mess with or get into, so I'm going to leave it alone for now. But know that they do exist, and there are people that use them. The truth is, I find this actually covers a lot of what I hear about, and actually what I read about. Any of those would easily fit into one of those categories. So I thought that breakdown that I found was actually nicely done. So when I look at spells and the intentions, like I said earlier, I feel like you're manipulating energy. You're manipulating the energy of that person, or how you react to that energy, especially if, you're shielding yourself from that energy. So earlier I said I'm not sure that a spell feels necessary to me. And again, this is to me. But when I really started thinking about it after I had done this research, I guess I felt like I'm kind of doing this already through speaking things into the universe. And of course, I'm doing that through prayer, through meditation, through inner work. And those things help me react differently. They're essentially changing me instead of the other person. Then I found, and I've said this before too, that the energy that I put out tends to come back to me. And I mean things like, okay, you engage with a narcissist, and if you don't engage with them, their behavior tends to cool off. Because when someone's coming at you with that kind of anger, but you don't fight back, when you don't engage, there's kind of nothing else for them to do because the fight's gone. It also got me thinking that maybe in a way, we're all already doing our own spell work every day with the things I just mentioned. The act of prayer or meditation could be in and of itself a type of spell. You're often calling on God or a creator or a source, aren't you? And isn't that supernatural? I mean, I consider that a supernatural power. But maybe the act of the spell is what gives it more energy. Do you know what I mean? When you're performing the act or going through those motions, you're lighting the candle, you're saying the words, whatever you've chosen to do, that's what gives it the energy. I said before, you feel like you're aiming a precise arrow. Maybe that's how you aim it. And then we perceive it, as humans, we perceive it as stronger because we perform the action or the ritual, which we're going to discuss in a second. I did this thing, therefore my intention will happen. I know the few spells I do are often more about the act of it, doing the motions, saying the words with the intention, um, and then the releasing it to happen and putting my energy to the outcome. Now, one of the questions is, do the spells really work? And I think that's hard to say at times. I think many believe that they absolutely do. But again, is it the actual spell, quote unquote, itself, or the change that we created in the universe by putting that energy out there? Maybe they're one and the same. If a spell is like a targeted burst of energy that relies on the personal energy and intention of the person casting the spell, the other things, let's call those non-witchy actions, I guess, the prayers and such that I was talking about before, I feel like they're basically doing the same thing though. They're putting energy into the world with intention in hopes of affecting a change. Interesting. Now let's move on to rituals. And I would love to try and get into the types of rituals, all the types. And I'm not sure I can do that because as I did the research, the ritual seemed to depend on what you were talking about. If you were talking about religion, if you were talking about magical things, if you were talking about holidays, and it went on and on and on. So for today, I want to stick with more magical and religious. Okay, so now what did the guy say earlier? All spells are rituals, but not all rituals are spells. That's just such a great way to put that. I love that. There is often a ritual included when you're doing spell work. But just like I said with my own life, my rituals don't always include a spell. I mean, a ritual may not be magical at all. It could be a religious ritual. It could be just a traditional holiday ritual. One definition of a ritual that I found is that it's a sequence of activities involving gestures, words, actions, or revered objects. That doesn't automatically equal magical, at least not to me. So in my research, what I discovered was a magical ritual is a structured, intentional practice that harnesses the power of energy, symbolism, and intention to create a profound and transformative experience. Oh, I love that. I love that description. But it's a sacred act, and it connects the practitioner with the forces of the universe, the divine, or even the spiritual realm. And magical rituals can serve a variety of purposes. It can be for manifesting your desires, it can be for protection, or maybe guidance, or maybe you're celebrating a significant event. But there are rituals in organized religion as well. And from what I can tell, there's some similarities. It's a ceremony where you connect to the divine. In my case, that would be God, Creator. It involves symbolic actions, and they're performed with intention and usually a devotion to honor the divine. Rituals provide a framework for worship, for meditation, purification, and those celebrations we were talking about, allowing individuals to experience a truly deeper sense of spirituality. They can be guides in your spiritual journey. Magical rituals will typically consist of several key elements. First, you're going to set an intention so that the purpose behind the ritual is established. And this is going to define the outcome that you're looking for, and it serves as a guide throughout the practice. There may be several tools that are used, like candles and incense, crystals, or even specific herbs. Those may hold symbolic meanings and help create the desired energy that you're looking for the ritual. Now, these symbols can be crucial in magical rituals because they represent and amplify the intention of the ritual. There are often actions or gestures performed during a ritual, such as casting circles. Some people will invoke deities or spirits, or you may recite an incantation or a prayer, Or you may manipulate energy through visualization or some kind of movement. Now, what these actions do is they serve as a conduit for channeling and kind of directing that energy towards your intended goal. So, when you get to the end of your ritual, you're most likely going to end it with a closing or some kind of grounding practice. Because what that does, it helps you release all that excess energy that you were holding, and it'll restore balance back to your body as you let all that energy go. I actually recently performed a ritual that, I guess it was sort of a spell. It was for the new moon, and with a new moon, you're often calling things in, and I was calling in self-love. So I gathered some supplies from around the house. I got some rose petals from my rose bushes out front. I think I had some cinnamon, maybe, had a pink candle, and I chose a rose quartz crystal. It's a great self-love crystal. And I started it by cleansing my space. I had some sage that I burned. You can also use Palo Santo or something similar. And then basically I got really quiet. I took a few deep cleansing breaths to get myself centered and relaxed. Then I lit the candle. This is often said to represent the divine spark within you. And then I visualized my intention, which was to see myself happy and feeling love from within. I also said a few things like I'm calling in unconditional love for myself, letting negative feelings fall away, or something similar. And then I sat for a bit with my eyes closed, visualizing these things and allowing that love to kind of fill my body. And I also let the candle burn down, sort of watch the wax and see if there was any sort of symbolism in the wax as it burned. And of course, you can end something like this by expressing gratitude for the experience. I also ground myself by visualizing the negative energy going back into the earth. I usually do it through my feet or out of my hands. And I want it to be used for good, of course. And then I draw new energy up from the earth and allow it to fill my body. And then I open my eyes. I've also done rituals on a full moon to release negativity. That's a good moon for releasing, a full moon. So you can maybe write a letter to yourself or to a person that you're holding anger towards. It's probably the thing that you want to let go of so that you can move forward. So I'll write that letter and I say everything. I say all of it, good, bad, and ugly. Say it all. And then go outside and I burn the letter. And I just kind of release that energy back into the inner universe. Again, releasing it so that it can be used for good. And again, quieting the mind, taking some cleansing breaths as you state that intention, as you burn the letter. And then, of course, I ground while I'm outside, kind of same as before. And this is just a quick example of some things I've done. But this is an example of the types of rituals that I do, and I know several people that do rituals that are similar in some way. We said this before, but I want to make sure we remember it, that a ritual isn't always based in something magical. I think often when people hear ritual, that's what they kind of think automatically, but that's just not true. I mean, look at a church, look at communion. That's a ritual. Look at a baptism. They follow steps, say the prayers, say the words. There's an intention behind it. That's a ritual. Look at when they take the offering. They pass the collection plates around. That's a ritual. And when you do these kinds of rituals, they're connecting to the divine. They're connecting to God. They're doing it through prayer and thanksgiving. Just like that offering, that collection that they took. It was gathered to do good for the church, and that's the prayer that they say, and that's what they ask that happens. Again, a ritual. So as you enter into or continue on a spiritual journey, I would suggest you research the path that you're choosing. See what types of rituals are involved in that path. See what of those appeal to you or what aligns with you. And be respectful in how you proceed in that. You always want to be respectful of other cultures and histories and such as you move forward into any religion or any practice. Also, remember when you're performing rituals, you need to show responsibility. Magic and energy can be very powerful things. Again, you should always approach magical rituals with respect, with reverence, and a strong sense of personal ethics. Always consider the potential consequences of your actions and make sure your intentions are aligned with the highest good for not only yourself but for others. And again, honor the traditions and the practices of the ritual. Rituals hold deep meaning and offer powerful experiences within their respective context. They can have a huge transformative effect on the individuals that are performing the rituals. They offer a space for introspection, for healing and growth, and allowing individuals to deepen their connection with the divine, maybe find solace in challenging times, or seek guidance in their personal lives and things that they need help with. They can serve as a source of strength, inspiration, and renewal. Especially in the religious space, rituals provide a space for collective worship, celebration, and even commemoration. They remind us we're all connected and of our responsibility towards each other. Rituals also pass down traditions and teachings and values from one generation to another, and it ensures the preservation of that religious heritage. I truly believe we all create our own magic in our daily lives, whether we realize it or not. Spells, rituals, whatever you want to call it is fine. Our magic is our energy, and how we use it is more similar, I think, than many of us really realize. And look, I realize that many of us are approaching all of this from different ways of thinking, but at the end of the day, I believe many of us have common goals, and that is connecting to the divine, to our divine, and growth and celebration. I would encourage everyone listening to embrace your curiosity and explore some of these ideas with an open mind and a sincere heart. Allow yourself to tap into your transformative power and discover the depths of your own magic. Thanks so much for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Make sure to like and rate and follow and do all the things for our podcast. Those things really do help us out. Links and other important things that you would need to know are in the show notes, so make sure to check those out. If you have ideas of topics you'd like to hear about or questions you want us to answer, drop those on the ballyhoobridge Facebook page or on IG at ballyhoo_bridge. If you're looking for guidance in your journey, head over to ballyhoobridge.com. There you can choose a time for a free 30-minute clarity call with me. In the meantime, take care of yourself and spread your light to the world. Until next time.